Welcome back to part 3 of the Red Fox in Snow. And we're going to work on the bottom of the front legs that are in shadow. So I'm using my 353 Cordovan to darken this area. Cordovan is a beautiful dark brown color. I'm making little tiny strokes in between the light strokes that we added last time. So I'm just kind of using the side of my pastel stick to cover this area and add this dark brown. I'm going to do this to the other leg as well. Now I'm going to use the 353 to darken the area on the chest as well. Now you can do this by breaking off a small part of the stick and just using the edge of this, the side of it, which I often do. I keep little pieces of broken pastel in my pastel box. I don't ever waste it if I can. Now here I am using a little piece of a 353. I have it between my fingers. You can't hardly see it, but I'm using the side of that to add the color to the front of the fox. Or you can use the end. Either one works. I'm blending with my fingers. Add those colors, and I'm going to add a little more dark brown with the Cordovan 353. You see I'm blending it. And then I'm going to add, I think it needs a little more red, so I'm going to use the 213 Sanguine to add a little more red to it. Using the tip, the sharp tip, to pull the hairs into the white hair that we put in earlier on the chest. Now I'm using the bottom edge to make strokes to make it look a little bit like hair down there. Now this is the 233. I thought I might use it, but I decided to use my pencil. This is my 17 yellow ochre that I'm using to make little hairs in there, which looks pretty good. Conte pencils work, as I've said, really well on velour and other pastel surfaces, and they afford a whole different range of colors than the other different sets of pastels. They all have a purpose. I'm continuing to add those little hairs with this is the chrome yellow, and I used my number 17 Conte, and then I'm coming in between using the 213, adding some more hairs. Add more 233 raw sienna to the coat. It's a beautiful color. And we're adding a little more 213 sanguine over that. I love to use these colors, and I love to paint on velour because it makes your animal look like you can just reach out and touch him. And some more raw sienna. And I'm going to use the edge of my, the tip of my sanguine, 213, add a little red. And then using the 207 chrome yellow, I can add some brighter hairs to the chest and the side. I'm not making them super distinct. I'm just kind of zigzagging them in, and it looks really pretty. This is one of my favorite pencils. This is the 28 Scarlet Conte pencil. So I'm using it to add some brighter hairs just here and there, not everywhere on the fox. A couple on the face, on the side, up at the top. It just adds a lot to the painting. Use your Conte 2B white pastel stick to add some delicate white hairs, use the edge of it, in front of the fox on his chest. Now let's finish the stomach by putting a layer of 411.5 over it, and we're going to add more color to make it darker. The same ones we've been using. We're going to use 263 Indian Red, 343 Rust, and 213 Sanguine. And we're going to darken it with 353 Cordovan. And then we'll go on to the fox's back. Add a few light hairs on the stomach with Conte 17 yellow ochre and Conte 47 Naples yellow. Use your 353 cordovan to draw in some dark hairs in between. Base coat the back of the fox with 411.5. You can see how the white charcoal pencil shows through that we applied earlier in the painting. So we're just putting a nice even coat on the back. Now we're going to add darker hair with NuPastel 263 Indian Red. You can either use the tip of the pastel as you see me doing here, or you can do one of the sharpened edges of the pastel to add those short hairs. So I'm kind of using it to go in between the white charcoal pencil lines that we applied at the beginning. Now here I'm adding white hair with the 2B Conte pastel stick. And I'm going to use my Create-A-Color black pastel stick to add black hairs in between as well. So here I'm using the black pastel stick to get into the smaller places and add the smaller black hairs. Blend them out with my finger. And then I'll go back and use the 263 Indian Red and add some darker red. So I work back and forth between the colors to get the look that I'm looking for. So if I think it needs to be darker, I'll add some black or some Indian Red. And if I need to add more white, I can do that too. Now here I'm using the Sanguine 213 NuPastel to add some red in the very top back of the fox, and also I will be adding it in the top of the tail. There's the black. I just love this little stick. It's Create-A-Color black pastel lead, not graphite pencil, but black pastel, and it works really well. Now here I'm using the 209 NuPastel dark gray to add dark gray hair into this back portion of the tail. I didn't want to use the black. I didn't want it to stand out as much as the other area of the tail. So I'm going to use the dark gray. And I'm also going to use the dark gray to add darker hairs on the stomach. You can see them, but they don't call attention to themselves, which is good. I'm just adding a few with the tip. You could use the edge, whatever works best for you. This is the 233 Raw Sienna. I'm adding some more hair with that. If you don't have that, you can use your Conte pencil number 47. For darker areas, I'm going to use this 353 Cordovan. You can see I have a very small piece left, but I'm going to add the darker color in with that. Now I'm working on the very top back of the tail, and I'm using my Indian Red 263 to add little hairs back there. You can see I've also used my white NuPastel or my 2B Conte to add white hair at the very top of the tail. They're longer and they curve down. Now I'm using the 353 Cordovan to add darker hair. Just working those in. And my Cretacolor black pastel lead here and there to make darker. I'm using the Conte pencil number 47, which is Naples yellow, to draw in some lighter hairs into the tail. And my 276 NuPastel on the edge. This is buff, to draw in some hair. And you can, if it's easier for you to keep using the Conte 47, use it. But this is brighter, which is why I'm using it. It's more highly pigmented. So that's why I'm using the NuPastel. I like the way that looks. And here I'm using the Conte 2B white stick to add some white hairs into that tail. For the brightest white hair, you can use your Rembrandt, the edge of it, the Rembrandt 100 white. It makes the brightest hair. I'm finishing the other side of this top of the tail with a 276 buff, some 213 sanguine to make it a little redder, and I'm using the Conte 28 Scarlet pencil. That's a great color, isn't it? That bright orangey red color. And a little more white. We're going to base coat the tail with 411.5 and cross hatch it. A beautiful scarlet color. We're also going to base coat the legs with 411.5, and we're going to finish them before we do the tail. I'm using the edge of my 411.5 to get close to the outside, and I'm going to put a little of this 231.5 gold and ochre on top of that as well to help blend it together. I'm adding the shadow on the back leg with 263 Indian red, and I'm going to darken that with 353 cordovan. I'm going to put a bit of 343 rust on that as well. So this is the cordovan. I'm going to add a reflected light on the left edge of this leg with 536.9. It reflects the snow in the back. Now on the back of that leg, I'm going to use the Cretacolor black leg to add black hairs to the back of the leg. I'm also going to use Conte pencil number 28 Scarlet and pencil number 47 Naples Yellow to add hair to that leg. The Scarlet will add the red-orange hair, and as we work into the light, the Naples Yellow pencil will add the light hairs. I'm adding some white hairs with the 2B Conte pencil on the top right of the tail and separating them with the Cretacolor black pencil. Putting in a few light yellow hairs with the Conte 47 Naples Yellow. Using my white charcoal pencil to pull up a few blades of grass and to outline the inside edge of the right leg. Draw in a couple of hairs there. That's where that reflected light is. We're going to emphasize it some. Now on the left leg, I'm using my 263 NuPastel to darken it. I'm using 353 Cordovan to darken the upper area of the leg that's in shadow. And then I'll go over that to make it even darker with either a black NuPastel, or you could use your Cretacolor as well. Add a tiny bit of red on the right edge with 213 and emphasize that, make it a little brighter with a Conte 28 pastel pencil. I'm going to use the Create-A-Color pastel lead to add the fine black hairs on the bottom edge of the tail, creating a boundary of sorts on the outside, and we can work inward. I'm going to add a base coat over the tail. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter with the 411.5 burnt sienna. Now you see the black hair I've added at the top. I did that with 209 NuPastel dark gray and 229 black. Here I'm adding a little more red with the 213 sanguine, which is just beautiful. Beautiful red color for that tail. The fur is very thick in the tail, and you can see a black spot down a third away from the white tip, which is a thick area on the tail. It creates a shadow of sorts because it's so thick. Here I'm adding a base coat of 231.5 golden ochre, more towards the bottom of the tail. It's warmer and brighter there. I'm not going to add it at the top of the tail. The dark gray 209 to darken the tail in a little further from the edge. And I'm using the edge of a 229 black NuPastel to add some very dark black hairs to this tail. Add touches of red with the 28 Scarlet Conte pencil at the very top. And use the 207 Chrome Yellow, a beautiful bright color that is, to add a few bright yellow touches. Using 353 Cordovan NuPastel, add the dark areas on the tail of the fox and the interior. So we want to use 353 because it's darker, and these are just kind of zigzag areas that indicate deep areas into the fur, and we'll put light fur on top of it. We're going to use black to put some black fur on the outside of this tail here at the top and working down to the bottom. But the 353 Cordovan is going to indicate these deep areas in the fur, and it's going to create a thicker, richer look to the tail when we're finished. So we're going to add these areas randomly across the tail with our pastel. Here I'm just adding hair with it, but when adding the little hairs from these deeper areas, they come out kind of randomly. So I'm going to use the tip and just start adding random dark areas based on what I see in my reference photo. I've worked all over my tail, getting down to the white tip, and we want to leave the white tip alone. I'm using 213 Sanguine now to just lightly add some red color all over the tail. I'm still adding that 213 Sanguine. Now for the hairs of the tail, I'm going to be using the number Conte 28 scarlet color. Be sure to watch the direction that you're drawing the hair. I love this color. It's beautiful. We're also going to be using the number 17 yellow ochre and also the number 48 Conte Naples yellow. This is the 17 yellow ochre. Just take your time. Just make sure that the hair is going, the tail is round, so the hair is going in around the tail. And they're not real long hair. You can see I just am kind of randomly pulling them out. They're also coming out from the center of these darker areas that we put into the tail earlier. This is the 47 Naples Yellow. Just take your time and build up the colors. I also used the 2B Conte white pencil and the 276 NuPastel buff to make hair. Now to paint the tip of the tail, I'm using the 209 dark gray to make some dark areas in the tip. And I'm going around this with my purple 548. I believe this is 536.9 violet, the darker violet color with some of the lighter one over it to blend around the legs and the tip of the tail. And to make the tail, I'm going to use the edge of a 211 white NuPastel to stroke in the beautiful hairs on the tail, and also the 2B Conte pencil. And make sure you follow the direction of the fur when you're drawing in the tail. In doing the tail, you can also use the edge of your 100.5 Rembrandt white pastel stick. That's what I'm using here. I'm using the tip of a new pastel stick to draw in the blades of icy grass around the base of our fox. Finishing up some details. I hope you have enjoyed this part. It's been rather lengthy but informative. I'm going to, in this set of videos, include a separate video on just how to do the tail with more detail in it. So join me for Red Fox Part 4 as we finish the background on this beautiful fox.